Planting season is here. Coming up on this episode of NTV's Grow, we look at how things are shaping up this spring, including Kent's forecast to help you get ready for planting. Plus, we dig into a couple of hot issues, water and taxes. We've started to see a lot of tractors in the field, either planting or getting ready to. But coming off a cold and dry winter, what does that mean for conditions? NTV's Megan Johnson has our top story.
Crop experts predict corn farmers, both in Nebraska and across the nation, will plant a little less than they did last year. With planting season upon us, area commodity leaders say there's a lot that goes into deciding which crops to put in the ground. Merritt County farmer and United Soybean Board Director Greg Grieving says Nebraska won't be seeing a big drop or jump in acres of that crop this year.
A lot of the people that we've talked to and had conversations with this year, there might be a little shift in acres, but it's going to be very minimal here in Nebraska.
Grieving says in today's import-export world, the global economy can quickly change even what a central Nebraska farmer chooses to plant.
China can say that we're going to buy how many million metric tons of soybeans, or they can say no, we're not, and that can influence the market one way or the other.
Nebraska Corn Board member Kurt Friesen says he worked with all corn last year, and though prices drive planting decisions for farmers like him, it's not what has him considering a few acres of soybeans.
Typically prices would drive my changes. This year I just wanted to kind of get back in my crop rotation because of insects, things like that.
Farmers say they've been busy with pre-plant work this spring because it's not just choosing what to plant, but when to do it. Much of Nebraska remains in moderate drought conditions, so any spring showers are more than welcome. The state climatologist says it's cool ground temperatures that are holding up planting, so farmers say they're anxious for a few warm days in a row.
We might just go anyhow. Just the threat of rain and getting the crop in on time is pretty important, but this year the soil temperature has been cold and it's stayed that way. It really hasn't warmed up.
Friesen says when it's time to plant, it's time. But that doesn't mean the weather conditions will stop being a factor during growing season.
There's plenty of moisture for planting. I'm not concerned with that, but I am concerned that we still seem to be in a drought pattern.
State climatologist Al Dutcher says this past Nebraska winter was the 18th driest in 118 years of records. But some good news on moisture. Dutcher says many snowpack places whose water ends up here in Nebraska are above normal, so stream flows could be up through midsummer.
Efforts by the nation's corn growers to get the crop planted in key states continues to sputter. The U.S. Department of Agriculture says just 6% of this year's corn crop is in the ground, compared to an average of 14% by this time of year. The sluggish start to corn season is especially pronounced in key farming states. Illinois growers have planted just 5%, while Iowa is at just 2%, and here in Nebraska, 4%. And while planting begins, we certainly continue to see dry conditions. The USDA says much of western Nebraska continues to experience severe drought, and only 46% of the state's topsoil and 39% of subsoil has adequate or surplus moisture. Farther south in Kansas, farmers got a little relief as temperatures warmed up and many areas saw some light precipitation. Many producers are waiting for the soil to warm before planting corn, but they're also keeping a close eye on the winter wheat crop decline. 32% of the Kansas winter wheat is rated poor to very poor right now, and only 24% good or excellent. You might say taxes are growing faster than the crops. The tax burden on farmers in Nebraska has doubled since 2009. NTV's Lauren Scharf caught up with some area farmers for more.
This is nearly a 120% hike, having some farmers worrying about years to come.
You have to fine-tune them just a little bit, yeah. Have to make some adjustments.
David Grimes prepares to plant.
We raise corn and soybeans and some alfalfa.
Making sure his equipment to do so is in ship shape.
And we have good farmland, lots of good farmland and ranch land. It has good soil and then the good irrigation water, and this part of Nebraska has surface water and groundwater and a good supply.
Grimes just recently moved to central Nebraska, but moving from a different county doesn't change paying property taxes.
You have to pay those taxes even when you don't raise a good crop or when the prices are low, as well as times when you make a good living as well.
Those taxes are falling a little heavier on families who own farm, ranch, and pasture land.
About 25% of the property taxes paid, which will grow to about $1 billion by 2015, are paid by farm and ranch families, which represent only about 3% of Nebraska's population.
Nebraska Farm Bureau say this lack of balance should be looked at closer in next year's legislative session.
It was disappointing that the legislature did not do more. There was some additional money placed in the property tax credit program, and that's important, but it's really not significant in measured against the problem that we have.
But for now, Grimes will just hope for a good harvest.
A farmer has to go on faith and kind of prepare and plan for adversity and hope for the best.
Since just last year, average ag land values in the state jumped up 29%. Each county, though, is different. Folks in Hall County saw a 41% spike.
Nebraska lawmakers came up with $400 million in tax relief in this past legislative session, but are still looking to do more when it comes to property taxes. This past session, the legislature approved $412 million in tax relief over the next 5 years. That included a measure which provides sales tax exemptions for farm equipment parts. One interim study for next session will look at how Nebraska determines the taxable value of agricultural land and compare Nebraska's process to other states. The government starts a new program to try and control a virus that has killed millions of pigs. The porcine epidemic diarrhea virus, believed to be from China, causes severe diarrhea in newborn piglets who die from dehydration. The USDA is now requiring farmers to report infections and requiring labs to report positive tests. Farms that suffer an outbreak will also have to participate in a program to help control the spread of the disease. Beef prices are at record highs, but the government hopes disaster assistance programs might help bring those prices back down. Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack is optimistic reestablishing the livestock disaster safety net will have the long-term effects of decreasing record-high beef prices. He's hoping ranchers will start expanding herds that shrink in recent years because of droughts.
They may get a little bit more confident. The risk may be reduced and they may get back in the business of expanding herds, and that's what we have to hope for. When those herds get expanded, then obviously prices will moderate.
Vilsack expects $2.5 billion in livestock disaster assistance to be paid out. More output with less input. That's a goal of many producers across the country, and the USDA is trying to help. The Agricultural Research Service is studying ways to help farmers pick the best breeding animals to increase food production. One researcher used dairy cows.
We'll be producing just as much milk with fewer animals and less effect on the environment, using less resources to produce that same amount of milk.
The goal is to help farmers choose breeding animals with the best genetic traits. When it comes to protecting the environment, many would say farmers are the original caretakers of the earth. Farmers are vastly more aware of what they put into the crop these days. Travis Rainforth uses moisture probes to monitor how much water is in the soil so he doesn't irrigate more than he has to. Just one example of how farmers are trying to be good stewards.
Every farmer's goal is to pass on what he has to the next generation. If we don't take care of it, it won't be as valuable to the next generation. It may not be as productive to the next generation if we don't take care of stuff.
New hybrids are a factor because farmers don't have to use as much water or fertilizer as they once did. Genetically modified crops have many critics, but some environmentalists say they're key to sustainable food production.
I mean, you look at what farmers use today for their inputs in terms of chemicals and fertilizers, and we're doing so much more on so much less than we did 30 years ago.
This past week marked Earth Day. Nebraska Farm Bureau says every day is Earth Day for farmers. Still to come, we check in with our market expert, and Kent Boughton's in with our forecast to help us prepare for planting.